Claire Mitchell never thought her life would take such an unexpected turn. Married for 5 years to Daniel, a man she loved but with whom her connection had quietly slipped into routine. Their days had become predictable work: dinner, TV, sleep. The spark she once felt was more a flicker now, faint and distant. She wondered if this was what marriage was supposed to feel like, or if she was missing something essential. When Claire enrolled in the evening literature course at the local community college, she hoped it would be a breath of fresh air, a way to rediscover herself beyond the confines of her domestic life. The class was small, and the professor, David Harper, was nothing like she expected. In his early 40s, with a calm voice and thoughtful eyes, he brought passion and warmth to each lesson. His knowledge was deep, but it was his gentle encouragement that drew Claire in, making her feel seen in ways she hadn't realized she longed for. At first, their interactions were strictly academic. Claire stayed after class sometimes to ask questions, lingering just a little longer each time. David never pushed her, but his attentive listening made her feel valued. Outside her marriage, where communication had faded, these moments became a quiet refuge. One evening, after class had ended, David asked Claire if she would stay a few minutes longer to discuss a poem they had read. She agreed, feeling a flutter of nervous excitement. They sat across from each other at the desk, the room quiet except for their voices. As he explained the layers of meaning, Claire found herself drawn not just to the poem, but to David's presence. His words felt like a mirror to her soul, reflecting emotions she had buried. Over the following weeks, Claire's visits after class became more frequent. They talked about literature, life, dreams, and disappointments. David shared stories about his own struggles, revealing vulnerability that deepened Claire's trust. She began to open up about her marriage, about feeling lost in the routine and yearning for connection. David listened without judgment, offering support that felt genuine and comforting. One night, after a particularly intense discussion about the complexity of human desire in art and poetry, Claire confessed how much she missed feeling alive. David nodded thoughtfully, saying that sometimes learning about the self required courage to explore feelings that society often labels as uncomfortable. He suggested mindfulness exercises and self-awareness, techniques to help Claire reconnect with her own emotions and desires. Claire was hesitant, but intrigued. She began practicing what David recommended: breathing exercises, paying attention to sensations, and allowing herself moments of quiet reflection. She realized how disconnected she had been, not just from her marriage, but from herself. The changes were subtle but growing. She felt more present, more in tune with what she wanted from life. Their relationship remained professional, yet the emotional undercurrent was undeniable. Claire sensed a deepening attraction but held back, aware of her marital commitment. David respected her boundaries, never pushing beyond the role of teacher and mentor. It was this respect that made their connection feel safe, even as emotions stirred. One afternoon, David invited Claire to join a small group workshop he was hosting on emotional intelligence and self-discovery. The workshop promised tools for deeper personal growth, and Claire hesitated only briefly before saying yes. She wanted to understand herself better, to find clarity. The sessions were eye-opening. Claire learned about boundaries, communication, and the importance of honoring her own feelings. Sharing with others, hearing their stories, made her realize she was not alone in her struggles. She began to see her marriage in a new light, not as a failure, but as a challenge that required honest conversation and effort. Back at home, Claire tried to share these insights with Daniel, but the conversations often felt strained or unfinished. Daniel was supportive but distant, unsure how to bridge the emotional gap. Claire felt torn between hope and frustration, wondering if love alone was enough. Meanwhile, her relationship with David continued to evolve. After each class and workshop, she found herself reflecting on what she learned. Not just about literature or emotions, but about trust and connection. David became a symbol of growth, catalyst for change in a life that had grown stagnant. One evening, after a particularly moving workshop, David offered Claire a private moment to talk. She agreed, and they sat together in the quiet room, the world outside fading away. He spoke gently about the power of self-acceptance and the courage it took to face inner fears. Claire felt tears welling up not from sadness, but from a profound release. In that space, Claire realized that her journey was not about replacing love, but rediscovering it from within and in all her relationships. David was a guide, not a destination. Her marriage was still fragile. She now had tools to face it honestly. As the semester progressed, Claire felt a growing sense of empowerment. She still loved Daniel, but she loved herself more. The art of pleasure, she understood now, was not just physical or fleeting. It was the pleasure of being fully alive, fully present, and fully seen. And though she didn't know what the future held, Claire was no longer afraid. She had begun to write a new story, one of courage, self-discovery, and the gentle unfolding of love in unexpected places. Claire felt a new energy inside her, one that she hadn't recognized in years. The lessons from Professor David were changing her, stirring feelings that were both thrilling and confusing. After each class, when she stayed behind to talk with him, she sensed something unspoken between them, a connection that went beyond books and poetry. Yet she kept reminding herself of the boundaries she had set. She was married, after all, but something about David made her want to explore life and herself more deeply at home. Claire noticed Daniel becoming distant without explanation. Their conversations felt routine, and the warmth they once shared was fading. Claire tried to bring up her feelings, but Daniel always brushed it off, saying he was tired or stressed. The silence between them grew heavier. Claire realized that she had been living in a fog, her marriage safe but empty, her heart yearning for more. One evening, after a particularly intense class discussion on desire and human connection, David asked Claire if she wanted to join him for coffee. He said it was just to talk more about the topics they discussed in class, nothing more. Claire hesitated but agreed. Sitting across from him in the quiet cafe, she felt the air shift. Their conversation was easy, natural, but charged with emotion. David listened deeply when Claire spoke about her marriage, her loneliness, and the new feelings she was trying to understand. He didn't judge her or push. Instead, he gently encouraged her to keep exploring herself, to not be afraid of her own heart. That night, Claire lay awake thinking about David's words. For the first time in a long while, she felt hopeful. Hopeful that she could find happiness again, not by escaping her marriage, but by rediscovering her own desires and needs. As weeks passed, Claire's visits to David's office after class became a ritual. They talked about more than literature. He taught her about emotional awareness, about understanding the language of the body and mind. David showed her that pleasure was not just physical, but also emotional and intellectual. He introduced her to mindfulness exercises, helping her become more present in her own skin. Slowly, Claire began to notice small changes. She smiled more. She walked with confidence. She allowed herself to feel joy again. One afternoon, David invited Claire to join a small, private workshop he was leading on emotional intelligence and intimacy. It was a safe space, he assured her, a place to explore feelings without judgment. Claire was nervous but curious. The workshop was unlike anything she had experienced, full of honesty, vulnerability, and shared stories. She listened as others spoke about their struggles and growth, realizing how much she had kept inside. She felt a quiet strength rise within her. Meanwhile, her relationship with Daniel became even more strained. He was supportive when she tried to open up, but he couldn't meet her emotionally. Claire's heart ached with loneliness, but she didn't give up. She wanted to save what they had, but she knew she needed to be true to herself first. David remained a steady presence, a teacher and friend. After one workshop session, he offered Claire a private moment to reflect together. Sitting side by side, they talked about the power of self-love and the courage needed to face life's uncertainties. Claire felt tears welling up, not from sadness, but relief. For the first time, she felt free to be honest with herself. She realized that her journey wasn't about replacing one love with another. It was about finding her own voice and strength. David was guiding her, but the path was hers to walk. One evening, Claire came home to find Daniel asleep on the couch. She watched him for a moment, the man she loved, yet who seemed so far away. She felt a wave of compassion and sadness. She knew she had to decide what was best for both of them. Her heart was no longer full of fear, but of possibility. She was learning that pleasure and love were about connection to herself first, then to others. The professor was teaching her not just through words, but through the quiet, powerful changes unfolding inside her. Claire was still married, still committed, but she was beginning to live for herself again. And in that, she found a new kind of freedom. Claire's world was shifting in ways she hadn't imagined possible just a few months before. The lessons with David had awakened something inside her, a quiet confidence and a deeper understanding of herself. Though still married to Daniel, she began to see her life through new eyes. The days of numb routine were slowly being replaced by moments filled with meaning and emotion. Her conversations with Daniel remained difficult. He was kind but emotionally closed off, struggling to understand the changes Claire was going through. She tried to share her feelings openly, but it often ended in silence or awkward pauses. One evening, after a long day, Daniel admitted he felt lost too. They both recognized that something fundamental had shifted between them, and neither knew how to bridge the gap. Claire felt torn. She loved Daniel and valued their years together, but she also realized she couldn't continue pretending. The emptiness inside her demanded attention, and the lessons from David had given her the courage to face it honestly. She knew that true love required more than comfort, it needed connection, vulnerability, and growth. Meanwhile, David remained a steady, respectful presence in Claire's life. He continued teaching, guiding her through exercises that deepened her self-awareness and emotional strength. Their conversations were always thoughtful, never crossing boundaries. But Claire sensed a bond growing between them, a bond of trust and mutual respect. David helped her understand that pleasure and fulfillment were not about secrets or escape, but about embracing her own needs and feelings with kindness. One afternoon, David invited Claire to attend a weekend retreat focused on emotional healing and empowerment. Hesitant but curious, she agreed. The retreat was intense, filled with honest sharing, group exercises, and moments of quiet reflection. Claire found herself opening up about fears she hadn't voiced before. The group support and David's gentle encouragement helped her see that she was not alone in her struggles. During one session, Claire realized that her journey was not just about her marriage, but about reclaiming herself. She had spent so long putting others' needs first, Daniel's, her family's, that she had forgotten how to listen to her own heart. The retreat was a turning point. She understood that love began with self-love, and that to heal her marriage or find happiness, she had to be true to herself. Back home, Claire and Daniel sat down for a long, honest conversation. They spoke about their fears, their hopes, and the distance that had grown between them. Daniel admitted he hadn't realized how much Claire was hurting. They agreed to seek counseling together to work on rebuilding trust and emotional intimacy. Claire felt a cautious hope, a sense that maybe, just maybe, they could find their way back. At the same time, Claire knew her connection with David was changing too. It was no longer just about learning or emotional support. It had become something deeper, a quiet friendship built on understanding and respect. She cherished their talks, the way he helped her see her own strength. But she also recognized the line they could not cross. Claire was committed to her marriage, and David honored that fully. As weeks turned into months, Claire felt more alive. She no longer feared her feelings or the uncertainty of the future. She was learning that life was complex and messy, but also full of beauty and growth. The art of pleasure she had been taught was about embracing all of herself, the light and the shadow, the joy and the pain. One evening, Daniel surprised her with a small gesture, a favorite meal. A handwritten note expressing his love and his commitment to try harder. Claire smiled, touched by the effort. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a beginning. She knew the road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in years, she felt ready to walk it. Claire also knew that no matter what happened, the journey she had started with David's guidance had changed her forever. She had learned to value herself, to seek joy in everyday moments, and to face life's complexities with an open heart. Her marriage was not a story of perfect love, but a story of growth, honesty, and courage. And in that truth, Claire found a kind of peace she had never known before. The future was uncertain, but Claire was no longer afraid. She was living, learning, and loving in her own way, stronger, wiser, and more herself than ever.